What's good, savages? Welcome to another episode of This Savage Life. Before I get started, I want to take a moment to thank everybody that have subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you haven't done so yet, go ahead, take a look, subscribe. It'd be greatly appreciated. I'm just trying to create some content that is going to be relatable, enjoyable. I'm working on offering a varieties of shows on this channel. But for now, I'll go ahead and stick with this one right here, where I like to just sit here and turn the mic on and work things through in my head. You know, sometimes I battle with ideas, and a lot of the times I just leave them out there. I battle them up here, constantly thinking and overthinking about them. And by doing what I'm doing right now, just turning on the camera and turning on the microphone, I can sit here and verbalize my thoughts, my feelings, my perspective. And sometimes I find the flaws in it just by speaking about, about speaking my truth. And, so I hope that if you are taking time to listen to this, that you can either relate to this or that you find this interesting. So that's really just my goal. I don't want to sit here and start telling people how to live their lives. I'm just going to share how I'm trying to live mine and my reasons, my beliefs, again, perspective. So yeah, it's been a crazy week. We have a new president, Donald J. Trump. Yeah, it's been an interesting one in the last few days on social media. If you've been paying attention, obviously. Yeah, I see a lot of you out there having a hard time coping with what's going on. And I feel like sometimes it doesn't quite bring out the best in you guys. I think that's something that some of you might want to stop for a moment and reflect on. I've seen some pretty funny shit out there in the last few days, and I've seen some pretty sad things, some pretty sad reactions. It just shows how strong the media propaganda is. It gets to everybody. And a lot of people aren't willing to admit that, but it's the truth. And some seem better equipped to deal with the reality than others. I'm never going to sit here and tell people how they should live their lives. You want to believe what you want to believe. I respect that. And look, I'm going to sit here right now in front of this microphone, and I'm not trying to make myself anything other than who I am right now. So I'm going to be completely honest with the thoughts that go through my head regarding what I noticed in the last few days. There's one thing about living a life of continuous growth, wanting to become better every single day, being able to willingly reflect on your flaws and attempt to correct them. For most of us, if we took the time to reflect on who we are today, and then we reflect on the older versions of ourselves, either it be 2 years ago, either it be 5 years, 10 years ago, I mean, even as short as who you were last month. Because sometimes change is drastic, sometimes it's very small, and sometimes it takes a long time. But it doesn't matter. I think everybody wants to be able to look back at older versions of themselves and recognize the flaws that the older version had, and being able to stand here today and say, I corrected that flaw. Now, we might collect new flaws along the way, but you really want to work on those character flaws that are more important than certain. You got to be able to prioritize certain flaws of yours. We all have flaws. We all have to accept that about ourselves. But a few years ago, I made a conscious decision that I was going to attack my flaws. But before I could do that, I had to sit and reflect and accept who I was in that moment with all them flaws. And I had to be willing to look at them and reflect on them and try to figure out why I'm like that, why I do that, why I react like I react in certain situations. And when I started on that journey, I said I was going to do this the right way, that I wasn't going to rush through this process because I really wanted to be the best version of who I was capable of being for my kids, my wife, first and foremost, my kids, my wife, and then everybody else that I could have a positive impact on. The kids that I coach, my coworkers, my friends, just everybody. An important thing that I do is that I reflect, but I don't forget the flaw. If I look back at an older version of myself, I'm able to recognize the flaws that I had that I've now corrected again. With new versions comes, there's always going to be, it's like you do an upgrade on your phone, right? It's a new version. But there's always going to be a few bugs that you didn't have before that comes with the new version. So maybe along the way you're collecting new flaws, but when we're talking about the main ones, the ones that keep you away from relationships, the ones that keep you in that depression and anxiety, those flaws. Because at the end of the day, if you're dealing with anxiety and depression, and I think just being able to recognize that a lot of those things are due to certain flaws that we need to address. And sometimes you might not know exactly what that is. Sometimes you might need time to reflect and meditate, pray on it until you're able to really recognize what the flaw is and what the next step is. And most times when it presents itself to you after you've meditated, reflected, prayed on it, a lot of the times what presents itself to you isn't what you want. Because most of the time what presents itself to you is hard. Just admitting that you have certain character flaws is extremely hard. The important thing is once you've established that you are going to purposely do your best to fix those flaws, you start recognizing them in others. Because a lot of those bigger flaws, they take time, effort, constant reflection, constant revision, and you become accustomed to the flaw. You become knowledgeable, everything that it can do and where it comes from. And it's important to recognize it in others. If you recognizing it in others, sometimes it's because either you have that same flaw that you are either not admitting to yourself, or it's either that you have already admitted to yourself and you're working on it, you've corrected it, or you're working on correcting it. So it's normal that you might recognize it in other people. So to take it back to the beginning of the conversation when I said, this week I saw a lot of people acting in certain ways, and I'm not sitting here on pointing my finger. That's not what I'm doing. I'm just saying I'm recognizing those flaws, quote unquote, or those ways, the reaction, because I used to have the same flaws and react the same way. And it wasn't until I recognized certain things as flaws where I was able to correct or at least work on them. Because some flaws will come along and you can go days, weeks without something flaring up, but then all of a sudden something will trigger you that you didn't think would, and then you're back to, wouldn't say you're back to square zero, but it knocks you down a few peg and you're like, shit, I still got some work to do. I still got a lot of work. The work never ends. That's one thing you're going to have to come to the realization when you're driven like I am to really, really become the best version that I possibly can be for my immediate team, the people that surround me. It's something that you have to be deliberate about when you decide it. And again, like I was saying, the work never stops. It never stops. Once you make that decision, first thing you have to realize and accept is that this is going to be an everyday thing. In order to maximize your potential, it has to be every day. It can't be every other day. It has to be every day. Every day you have to sit down and reflect on your day, or you have to reflect on who you are in the moment and try to improve on that version. Sometimes I like to pause because I'm really thinking hard. I guess I'm going to try to take a change in direction here just to try to, again, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I'm just really working through my thoughts sometimes when the microphone is on. And sometimes there's a thought that pops into my head that completely derails the flow, the role I was on, the thought I was on. Something that creeps in. And it kind of can shift the direction of this conversation. One of the things that I mentioned early in the episode was what I was trying to do with this channel, what I was trying to do with these episodes, whatever I'm trying to do, create content. And one of the things that I have to realize is that in order to become better at what I'm doing right now, I need to be doing more of this. I listen to everything I record. I know it sucks if you're someone like me that does this. Sometimes you have to listen to yourself. Like I do a few edits. I have to listen to the episode number one because I want to, if I can't listen to it, it's like, if I don't like it, I feel like it's going to be hard for someone else to kind of get engaged. So I don't think I've ever not released anything I've recorded, but first and foremost, like I listen, I try to edit out sometimes I fumble with my words or I say something and whatever it is, doesn't matter. I don't edit out any of the meat. It's really sometimes some awkward silence or and the better I get at this, the better I can get at delivering my message or my intentions. Because sometimes you have a camera, I'm sitting in my office right now and I'm by myself and it's just me and a microphone. I have no one to bounce ideas off, and it's hard to just get started, get warmed up. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes I get into it and I'm like, I feel great, and then sometimes I'm just flat and I doubt myself, I doubt what I say. Like, we live in a day and an age where like sometimes speaking your truth can get you canceled. So a lot of people seem to just be tiptoeing around their truth because they're unwilling to speak it. because they're afraid that their friends, their peers, their family might shun them. And I think, yeah, last week in the episode I recorded, when I spoke about purpose and perspective and all those attributes and things, I spoke about speaking your truth. And I think that a lot of us are scared. And one thing I have noticed, there's definitely a shift online, not only about the narrative, but also about popular opinion. And a lot of you seem to be panicking. I don't exactly know why. Maybe I could take a guess, but I don't think I've given it enough thought or reflection to give my opinion on it yet. But I can imagine that if for the past few months you've completely attached your identity to a team, and that team loses and gets exposed, yeah, I might understand why you're panicking. And why you're virtue signaling so hard. I get it. And I'm willing to admit that in the past 4 years, I've changed my views on a lot of things. I've opened my eyes to a lot of things. I'm still here, able to accept that I might be wrong. More than any election results, more than any team that won, more than any of all those things, when I see the reaction of some of you, that is what worries me the most, is that we're heading in a direction of complete division in society, where we feel the need to completely cancel anyone that doesn't agree with us. Again, I think I'm seeing it on one side more than the other. But I don't care. I don't care whose team you are on. I'm going to say it right now. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care who you support. All I want to know is, are you a good person? Do you treat others with respect? Do you keep your virtues to yourself? Are you open-minded? If you are those things, I don't really give a fuck who you vote for, who you support, who you identify as. I don't care about all those things. If you're a good person, I'll fuck with you. If you're not, I won't. You start somewhere sometimes when the microphone goes on, and then you go into place where you're like, I'm trying to bob and weave myself in this. My brain sometimes jumps around and goes into one thing that I say reminds me of something completely different in a completely different direction. So sometimes you might listen to episodes like this and you go like, man, this guy's making no sense. And I hope that's not what you get out of this conversation. I hope that for at least a few moments during this 33-minute conversation, I was able, and I say 33 minutes, but it's probably going to get chopped down to shorter after I edit. But let's say this 25 plus minute conversation, I hope I was able to string some sensible things, some things that made sense along the way. But again, gonna end it here. Again, I want to thank everybody that took the time to subscribe to the channel, SVG TV on YouTube, Savage Paulson on Instagram. That's where I am the most present, I guess. Yeah. And if anything I said during this episode got you upset or I was wrong about, the comment section is there. I'm willing and able to entertain your comments, at least. Be civil, be respectful. If you're not, then you know what happens. Be good, be kind, be great, but most importantly, be yourself. Much love. Stay savage.